bucks a week to do our show. But it was, again, it was sort of this overall station cost that I couldn't do that. But yeah, that is something, again, on the internet, I can raise Kickstarter money to do a podcast and not have to answer to anybody, so.
I have a show, it has various segments, and some of them interest me, and some of them don't, and which I'm sure is probably true for a lot of people. And it's like, if I knew when the segments that in theory that would interest me were going on, I could either tune in or make a point to go to the website afterwards if I miss it. But as far as I know, you can't do that now. It's after the fact. You can go look at a show and segments will be listed, you can listen. But if you wanted to do that in real time or even beforehand, like, I don't know, maybe on the website you do it and I just don't know it. There's before a show.
Yeah, we did do it on the website a little fluid, depending on how well each segment is going, and even on breaking news, because we're live news-oriented program. So even though we program most of the show each day before the show starts, or all of the theoretical shows, sometimes that's changing. But on our webpage, we do list the segments that are planned in order. And obviously after the fact, if you're podcasting, they arrive in your computer as not just one big 2-hour block, but each individual segment.
Which is great for after the show, but I mean, I'd remind you, one of the delicious biases of radio is that you are forced to listen to things outside of your customary data silo. And like today, I forgot what I had to listen to before. I had to. No, it was all right, because there was something really juicy. I think it was, did you talk about the basketball guy again? There was something you had to listen, that I had to listen to before the good segment, and it turned out to be the better segment than the one I wanted to listen to. I mean, and it was part of, I think that's part of why we kind of shortened things a little bit from the old years. Or some of the segments are like 6 to 10 instead of 10 to 12, or there's a little bit, which makes even that more bearable for we net generation. Click forward.
In effect, get an alert when a topic, get a text message that says Brian's interviewing so and so now. Listen in. In effect, the audience that really is passionate about a subject maybe misses half the time.
Yeah.
That
I remember you
you
were tweeting.
Yeah, we've been doing that with public radio, a bunch of tests with public radio around similar kinds of things, and also using it also for the Public Insight Network. So you can reach out to people who you know a lot about, and even if they're not listeners, and get information from them and bring them in.
Jason Cherbokas was in the internet business from 95 to 2001, and been an internet civilian ever since, and had the same sort of reference point for owned radio in the sense of community that owned radio built. My question really has to do with intimacy. I mean, one of the things that's so seductive about radio is this sense of intimacy that it delivers. And it's different when you're producing it. I've done a little radio. It doesn't feel as intimate as it feels on the listening to it. Certainly in the social media era, I find Twitter and even to a degree Facebook and other social networks far less intimate, or it's a different kind of intimacy. It's a many-to-many kind of party line conversation, and while there's terrific community and connection, to me the sense of intimacy is different.
Yeah, I feel like the hotter the medium is, in the sort of McLuhan sense of hot media, the more intimate it feels. So that the text-only ASCII2 well conversations, because text is a hot medium, because it was only in one, it's only hitting you through one sense compared to some kind of Facebook page with pictures and sounds. The sense of connection was really strong. It was just like radio. Radio's so much hotter than, say, television. That's what, again, McLuhan was really into that difference, that television would make us all cool because it was so grainy, and you had to interpret it as you watch it, and it was sight and it was sound. So I feel like it's really the new multimedia internet that has much less.
This, even though we're talking about a medium that I work in, because I feel like I work in all these mediums now, but the intimacy with somebody on the radio, it maybe is hot in the McLuhan sense, but it's also one way. And so the intimacy that people who are very active on Facebook and things like that get is so multi-directional and personal in a whole other kind of way that, you know, we're redefining the notions of what's public and what's private in our society around that because it's so intimate, you know.
And the real question for me here is still going back to monetization and local radio. We haven't really talked about how local radio is dying in around the country and in New York for independent radio stations and everywhere else, partially because major corporations have taken over that, or just local radio is not monetizable as it used to be. Advertisers are advertising, or they want the way the internet went, where they want the big national advertisers to pay for it, and it's part of the community thing. You want more Facebook community, fan people, so you have to reach to the wider audience all the time. So
the not-for-profit public radio model may be more financially viable than the commercial advertising driven model. And if that's true, one of the main reasons I think is because of the direct connection to community. And so when we do our fundraisers and go on the air and ask for listeners to contribute directly, the only reason that people do is because they do feel a sense of community, a sense even of oasis, around what we're trying to do. And I think that's biased in the direction of local.
Joe Plotkin from the BYNet and NYC Wireless and a whole bunch of other places. One of the things you do extraordinarily well on your show, which I listen pretty much every day, is pick callers. Not just when you call out, like today you had somebody who called in who was the city administrator in some town. It was amazing. But even when you don't get that, when you just call out for regular, now I recognize that some of it is because you get, 100 calls and you're only picking one or two, but, C-SPAN has the same, only takes a few phone calls, and those, it's routinely moronic calls. Partly, maybe it's New York based, but, you're pulling from a more intelligent, your audience is more intelligent, but I don't think that explains it. But I want you to, if you could speak to as a New York chauvinist, of course. I'm a native too, so I'm on. But I'm just curious because you said that you were having that it's much more difficult. Right, I know that. It's much more difficult for you to sort of develop that same sort of or screen to that level, or you don't screen in terms of the web stuff. And I'm just curious, since you're adept at it in radio, have you thought about more moderated, trying to moderate it, or
assign during the show to, I don't know, moderate. Joe, maybe you want to talk about this, since you do it sometimes. I don't know if you call it moderate comments, but keep an eye on comments. Because yes, there has been attention on our comments pages over the years, as there has been for so many media, where you can sort of control the civility or intelligence level or whatever you want to call it of the conversation on the air or in your magazine, and then when you let the comments page go, you don't know who's going to go on there and just flame out. And the thing about flaming out is not that, oh my God, look what the person said about me or about the guest or about the issue that's so offensive. It's that it becomes an uninviting domain for the larger number of people who want to go there to get something.
Answer a specific question applies, asking on air for that, it applies online as well. And whether it's a comments page or like a large-scale crowdsourcing project, if we ask people to tell a specific story, it's much more effective. And I think C-SPAN, if I'm correct, it's literally a phone number for Democrats and a phone number for Republicans.
Just speak up a little
I'm a freelance journalist for Radio Print. Do you have to do any verification of your citizen journalists when you call them, when you call for specific facts? Like, I'm thinking of the Milk Project specifically.
How quickly we learned, because that one was early on in our people to just go to their nearest grocery store or supermarket and write down the price. Then we just try to pick 3, really standard market basket items. So we said a head of iceberg lettuce, a quart of whole milk, or however we describe the milk, and a 6-pack of Budweiser. And we were looking for the variation, and we mapped the 400 or so locations that people put in. So when we saw the real outliers, like, oh my God, the $15.99 6-pack, luckily we did just before we put it up. We said, oh, people, look at this. We said, oh, let's go to that store and check it out. There was no $15.99. At the moment is expanding its web department and certainly its seriousness about this kind of thing, and developing a set of technical crowdsourcing tools, for example, so that we don't have to go out and discover covered live the next time we want to do a thing, or the next generation of whatever that is. So there's now a small staff that's doing that kind of thing, and we do need more of the ability to say, I'll give you an example related to you. There are all these tools that Sunlight Foundation and PdF-related organizations are putting out to monitor what the government is doing, for example. But we need to devote some time or a learning curve or something to figure out how we could use some of those things in the time available to a daily radio show and discover some things that are going on at the government level or whatever, use some of this data that's
right now. And I'm interested in sort of digging into more about the sort of hyper-local kind of de facto community you get by isolating your audience to a location, which is kind of what the original medium of radio did just by sort of its very nature, and how that can be recreated, more in sort of that traditional sense online. And I think there are lots of precedents for that in many ways. I kind of argue that Facebook's only successful because it was catalyzed by extremely hyper-local pre-existing communities.
The history of radio, local radio, is that there was a very fortuitous technological accident of radio station transmitters putting out a signal just about the same distance as the car, which was coming in at the same time, or even commuter trains, allowing commutes into a central business district. So the New York metro area, as we think about it, for commuting purposes, is the exact same radius as pretty much the area.
Clear out at around 9. The bar is open, wine and beer is on us. There's a $15 suggested donation. If you can toss something in the hat, we appreciate it. I want to thank our guests, Brian Lehrer and Rushkoff. We're taking a little hiatus for the rest of the summer. Our next event will be in early September. Watch your email or listen on the radio for updates. And until then, enjoy the rest of the summer, and we'll see you online. Thank you.